Happy.
Oh my God, Shan, how are you?
I'm doing really well. How about you?
I'm really well. I am so happy to see you.
Same,
Oh, I wish I could hug you.
same here. It's been a long time since we saw each other.
I know it has been. What a huge pleasure, Shan. Thank you so much for doing this Instagram live conversation. I know that our supporters are so excited to hear from you. They've been sending in some questions which I'll be asking you. But just to quickly say, so I'm Britta and I'm the Executive Director for Women from International. And this is my wonderful colleague, Shan. Oh, I love you, Shan. From our office in Erbil in northern Iraq. And Shan is our economic empowerment manager. And really what that means, and we're going to hear from you about this, but it's really a huge part, of course, of our program that we implement, where Shan is overseeing the training that women receive that enable them to eventually then earn and sustain an income. So, but more than anything, Shan is this incredible fountain of love, really. And I was thinking, Shan, you know, I was able to spend some days with you when I visited, and I saw how much the women that go through our program, both women who are, you know, at the time were enrolled, but also women who had already graduated, who were still coming to the training center to see you. Do you remember there was this one woman who came to see you because she was actually quite upset. She was going through some difficult times, and when she arrived, she was really low, and you could tell. And you just gave her your entire focus and attention, and just held this space for her. And then literally half an hour later, after you had spoken to her, and she had, you know, been able to share with you what was grieving her, she was a different person, and she left. And you know, maybe her external circumstances had not changed, but you had been able to give her that love and compassion. And so that for me is who you are more than anything else. So it's such a huge pleasure to talk to you. How are you doing?
Well, that's very kind of you to say. I'm doing really well. I'm abiding by the law, by the guidelines, staying at home, trying not to touch my face.
That's so hard, right?
It is very difficult. It's way more difficult than you would think. And so yeah, it's been a strange time, actually. I've never had this kind of experience, staying at home for so long and trying to still help women out there and deliver services to them. So, but we're just glad that we have found this way to stay in touch with our women. We call them, we check up on them, we look for other service providers, try to help them and provide some service for them.
Yeah, because you just mentioned that you still find ways. Because I imagine, because I know that the Iraq government ordered a kind of a lockdown on the 8th of March, right? Was that quite early?
Yes, it's been a while. They shut down everything very early in the month, and then we had to suspend our activities from March 8th, and we have still suspended activities working from home.
Exactly, because women can't gather at the moment, but you have found a way to stay in touch with them via phones, right? Because actually, I remember seeing this, that a lot of the women do have access to mobile technology.
Sure, yeah, they do. Most of them have their own phones, or even if they don't have their own phones, they have put their husband's phone number. So when we call them, we're saying, we're from this organization, and can we talk to your wife? Then they put out their wives on the phone, and we get to talk to them.
And so tell me how was that? Because that must have been quite incredible, because I imagine that the women didn't expect to hear from you in that way, right?
That's true. Actually, we've been dividing these phone calls among all of us. I got the chance to call some of the women as well. And it's just an extreme feeling. They feel really good. They're like, oh yeah, you called to check up on me. This is amazing. Thank you so much for checking up on us. And we're so sad that the center, our classes have been suspended, but we know it's for the better good and for the greater good. And they look forward for us to start our operation again. At some point, they were so afraid that we're not going to start our classes again. We were like, no, don't worry about that. We're here. We're going to stay. And we're just waiting for this time to pass. Otherwise, we're here for you. We're going to continue with our classes.
Yeah, and that must be just so wonderful also, right, for you to hear this, Shan, that there is this great desire that women want to continue to be enrolled, and they want to continue to learn what what the classes have to offer them, and where they're reflecting a little bit on what they have already learned and how they're kind of maybe using that at the moment, and given that they're at home, which must be challenging for them too, right?
Exactly. It's challenging for everyone, actually, especially for them after staying at home for so long. And then they finally found this window of getting out of their houses and socializing with other people. Now they have to go back to their homes and stay in there, stay put. So it's challenging for them as well. And they miss the classes, they miss their trainers, they miss everyone from the organization. And one thing that really came up a lot during these phone calls that we did was the way that they learned how to save money. Earlier in the session, they save money, how to have money on the side. Now they have that amount of money to dig into and spend in this time while their husbands can't go and work, while it's really difficult to make daily income as their daily labors.
Yeah, I think this is so amazing because Siobhan, my colleague Siobhan and I, we last week was the International Day of Happiness, and we were talking about that, and then we did another like an Instagram live on resilience, and I was reflecting on the importance, and the Women for International program, I think, is built to create resilience, isn't it? And actually, this is such a perfect example. And I was thinking that saving money is definitely something that we can do to build resilience. And so it's really encouraging to hear that in this moment right now, what we've been teaching women, that it's coming in handy, because I imagine what it must be one of the fears that they are facing, because I know that even here in the UK, I think a lot of us are worried about our own personal financial well-being if the economy is affected by this. And I imagine that the women that we serve, who are, of course, who have a completely different starting position, right, as you said, who never knew how to save money, who didn't have any economic income opportunities, are they worried about that? It's like, what do you think are their main worries when you spoke to them?
Well, definitely, it's not only that they're worried about themselves, though. The thing that I loved the most is when I was talking to them, they were even advocating for their neighbors. They were even advocating for the women they met during the classes. They're like, I still have a little bit of food left, but I'm really worried about my neighbor whose food is about to decline. And is there any way to help them and support them? That's when we gathered as Women for Women and thought about we need to do our service mapping and see who are the actors and how can we further support these women? How can we link them to the services and so they can benefit from those services offered? They're definitely worried. But the other thing is we recently have the economic trainers on board, and what they talked about with the women was this possible exhibition down the road. So they encourage them to do their handworks, and those who know some work with bead, making jewelry, making some handcraft and so on. So right now, the way that they're spending their time at home, they are making stuff. When the trainers call them, they're like, well, we're busy with this because we know the exhibition is ahead of us and we can't wait for that. We're just preparing ourselves for that. So it's really good that they're trying to spend their time a more productive way. It was difficult for me in the beginning of this thing of this situation to stay productive. I had to adjust my own routine.
Right.
In them who doesn't have so many resources that we do, who doesn't have the background to spend their time reading, they need to do something else, and they're doing handicraft.
I know, literally, I'm sitting here, honestly, Shan, and I'm thinking, inspiration or what, right? Because this is exactly it. To accept what you can't change and to make the most of the situation that you're being given, and always have the hope that in the future change will come, because it always does, isn't it? It always does. It's just a question of how long it's going to take. And you know, and what a wonderful way to approach this, you know, to use this time to stock up with a view to having a bazaar or like an exhibition where they can sell all their products. I think that's fantastic. Do you know, as we were talking, a couple of comments were coming in. And
Yeah.
a rural cake, was somebody was commenting on, you know, it's actually not about how much you have that determines how generous you're going to be. Sometimes it's actually how little you have that determines how generous you're going to be, which is, you know, is absolutely beautiful. And I think I definitely see this all around me. The sense of community has really shifted, and I think it's probably something that I find I often see in you know, in when I visited Iraq, but also in other countries at Women for International, that there is this immense sense of community, despite, or maybe because of the poverty and the harsh circumstances. And only now in countries like the UK, you know, in my lifetime, and in many people, in most people's lifetimes, we have not had a crisis like this. And, you know, and for the first time, we're in a place where we don't know what the next day is going to bring in some ways, even though still, as we just said, in, you know, in really safe environment. You know, I mean, I have got a roof over my head, I've got access to running water, etc., etc. And nevertheless, you know, there is this this insecurity. And I think I'm hoping, you know, in some ways, Shan, I'm hoping that this is an opportunity for all of us to stop and you know, kind of press pause and realize what we have, and also just how strong and resilient we are. But it's super inspiring to hear that the women are doing that and that they're embracing this situation. But also wonderful, Shan, that you and your team, that you've gone immediately to think, okay, so we might not be able to do our classes, but what else can we do? You know, how can we continue to support the women and encourage them to connect and use this time and not to lose hope, right?
Yes,
Because
exactly.
I think like hope, and actually this is like the beginning of a series where we, you know, that we want to focus in on like hope behind the headlines, because I think it's I mean, I don't know about you, Shan, but I've stopped watching the news because it's just too much scaremongering and too much negativity and too much just you know, it just gets me really down. And so I'm like, no, I'm going to focus on the good things. So I like this idea of hope. What about, and this was actually one of the questions that that our Instagram followers were wondering about. You know, how do you keep up hope, and kind of what are you hoping for the future?
Well, definitely we're keeping up hope, and we're hoping for a better future. We're hoping that this situation is gonna help us to become stronger than we were before. It's really having me think in a different way in order to prepare our women in a different way in the future. Because at this moment, I don't think we have prepared them for a situation like this COVID-19. It's gonna help to better prepare the women in the future, in the first few months that we meet with them, how to better strengthen them. And it's really, I know that things are going to go back to normal. This is inevitable. And when it goes back to normal, yeah, we can do way more better things that we have than we have done already. And the women is really inspiring us. They keep inspiring us. For example, the other day I was on the phone with one of our participants in Shan, which is a district between Duhok and Nineveh, and she said,
yes, exactly. That's an area where we just, because I remember we just started not that long ago, right, to work there. Yeah.
Exactly, that's under Charlotte Tilbury. And what happened is she said that she took this time to reflect on what she has learned in the classes, and she has written down a letter to Women for Women telling us what she has learned and what does she want to do in the future. Her husband is a taxi driver who doesn't make so much income, and she was like, now more than ever, I know how important it is for me to have my own income and to have some more saving on the side, so it will help my family to become better and to be able to adjust with this situation in a better way. So it's really inspiring having this woman sitting at home and writing a letter to the staff to tell them how grateful she is for the things that we're offering. And she ended the phone call with, if you are not here, what would we do?
Aww.
big responsibility, but again, it gives you hope and inspires you to do better. And hope is really the light at the end of the tunnel. And that's what we're looking at right now, just to be able to make it through these dark times while we're making sure that we're using our time in the most effective way.
Right, this is it. Oh my God. I mean, you are totally my inspiration. I think you know this, right, Shan? I am so inspired by you and by your dedication and your clarity, just the clarity that you have, and in terms of the purpose in your life and what you do. And so, and I know that I felt I knew the answer to that question, and because I think that is what connects us, because I'm exactly the same. That for me is like hope is, that is it, you know, that is absolutely the engine that drives us, and whatever we give up, we must never give up hope, because also the women we work with, right, they literally never give up hope. It's no matter what comes their way, right? That's been my experience. You know, you mentioned just one thing I wanted to ask you about, because you said that because I know, so one of the parts of our core program that we implement is also health, right? And we teach women about health and nutrition and so on. And I think we did teach them about like hand washing and like around COVID-19, right? Before you closed, were you able to do some work on that?
Definitely, we did that before we suspended our activities. COVID was happening in China and it was starting to spread to other countries. That's when we took our own precaution, and we started teaching the women about the proper way of washing their hands, about the proper way of keeping hygiene while during this time. So we have gone over that with our all participants, and we have taught them about those things and shared them over and over again with them, because we were still teaching for a while. We still had courses for a while this was happening. So at the end of each class that we had, there was a refresher of how to take care of yourself, how to keep distance from people, and those guidelines which came out of WHO.
Yeah, exactly. And so when you said that you want to think about, you know, once this is the crisis is over, you want to think about what more you can do, right, to teach women how to protect themselves against potential future crises like this, is it?
Definitely. The things that are coming in mind right now is, for example, how to teach them to become more resilient, how to teach them. We have a number of women who are spending their times making things right now at home. How can we make sure that everyone is spending their times like that? How can we make sure that we're providing them with enough resources to keep them busy while they're at home, and possibly brainstorm ways with the women, be the best way to keep in touch with them if something like this happens again in the future.
Yeah, exactly, right. It's because I know as Women for International, we've been talking about how can we use technology more, you know, to stay in touch with our women, but also how can we potentially use technology to distribute the information we have, the teachings, but to a much larger audience. And I know in some of our other countries, Shan, and I don't know if you heard about this, but I know like in Nigeria and in the Congo, they're using radio, you know, to get the messages out. And in Bosnia, I just heard that one of the associations of women, they've started making masks. So they've been like knitting masks, and you know, so to your point, you know, women are just such change makers and such innovators in times of distress. It's really inspiring to hear. And one of the questions that our followers also had was, what brings you joy? And also, by the way, anybody listening, if you have any questions, put them in the message. I'll keep an eye on that, and then we can see what Shan thinks. But yeah, so what brings you joy?
Well, as an economic empowerment manager, what brings me joy is a woman starting her own business and making her own money. And as a women advocate, what brings me joy is seeing strong women out there defending their own rights and the rights of other women.
Yay! And you know, and as we were talking, I don't know if you saw this, but the Banguria, do you know the small business that we visited of I think it's 5 women who set up their own sewing center, right? And they are on Instagram, and I saw them, they joined the conversation. I'm like, oh my God, did you see that? You didn't see that? Yes. Oh my God, because I remember, so just for you guys who are listening, so this is an amazing group of women who graduated, was the first ones to graduate, and then they set up their own a little store in the home of one of the women, isn't it? And when I visited them, one of the things they really needed and wanted was a special sewing machine, wasn't it? Like an embroidery sewing machine. And I think they got it now, right? And because I see the beautiful clothes that which they put on Instagram, and so yeah, I saw them come up. But you know, so talking about the joy that you get out of seeing women setting up their business. And I know you have hundreds of incredible stories in your heart, but what is one of your favorite ones that you can share with us?
Actually, not to repeat what you said, I'm going to talk about another story. So we had a participant who was at her lowest. Her husband had been arrested for some problem that he got into. And this woman just felt so alone with having no one. When she first wanted to join the program, her family members, her brothers said, no, you can't go because we don't have women going out of the house by themselves while your husband is not here. So
because that is such a reality in Iraq, right, Shan? I mean, I have to say that really struck me, just how restrictive the environment is for women, right? Mm-hmm.
And especially those places that we go and work in, because they need us to be there. That's why we target those locations which are more conservative, and we can provide services for them. So what she had to do, she had to convince them. She had to talk to them and say, no, I'm going to join this program because it's going to benefit me. She was on the verge of dropping all her kids out of school. But what she did was, after joining the program, deciding that the importance of education, how important it is for her children to stay in school. And above that, she learned how to sew. She improved her sewing skills. We referred her to another organization who supported her with startup kit. She makes good money now. She takes care of her children. She sends money to her husband to support him. So it's amazing. It's amazing to see what women can do and what they're capable of. They just need a little push, and then they're there.
And you know what always, that's right, they need a little push, and that push comes in several ways, doesn't it? It comes through the kind of financial support we provide, through the access to knowledge, but don't you think above all, by putting women together, that suddenly, you know, you have this sisterhood and you suddenly realize you're not alone, and it's just like
Exactly. It's that sisterhood. She inspired her neighbors to go and join the program. They inspired each other. They kept being this support system for each other. So it's not only I'm doing this by myself or you're doing this by yourself. What the program does, it really brings a lot of different women together, and they become this network of support to each other. One of the other women that I was talking to, she said, before this program, I only knew my in-laws because I'm not even close to my family anymore. They live far away. But right now I have friends, and the way she word friends, this support system, these people that she checks up on, she calls them, they call each other to see how they're doing. So it's just amazing to see this friendship that we take it for granted. What is friendship? We make friends at school, but no, these women never had a chance to go to school.
Exactly.
They don't have friends from school. They don't have friends from college. What our program does is providing this space, this platform for them to be able to even make friends, stay in touch with each other.
I know, it's absolutely my, you know, if I had to choose, which I don't, but if I had to, that is my favorite part, really, Shan, that love and that friendship that is created, you know, between the women, but also between the women and the trainers, that is, you know, stays. And I know you have every single woman that you have met is right there in your heart, right? And it's just beautiful. It's so beautiful. Can I just ask, you know, I think that woman that you were just talking about, did I not visit her in her home?
You did.
Right. Yes. Right. Exactly. I knew it. Because I cannot stop thinking about her. I mean, I feel like I'm sitting right now on her, you know, in her little house on the floor, and she is so generously offering us all the cake and all the food she has in her home. And oh my God. And I knew from you that she had very, very little. And there she was, just so generously. And not only that, but she gave me this beautiful little belt that she had made. Do you remember that no, I mean,
yeah,
incredible. And they're so wonderful. And there are a couple of people saying, you know, thank you so much for sharing that story, because it's just, it brings it all alive, you know, Shan. And I know you mentioned earlier that this work that we are able to do in Dohuk now, that is being funded through Charlotte Tilbury, which is one of our incredible corporate partners. But then I was talking to one of our individual supporters yesterday, and she has contributed money for the business startup kits, and then I just think, talking to you, it makes it so real that the support that our wonderful followers and supporters are giving, whether that's big grants like Charcuterie or small contributions like sponsoring a woman, or, giving slightly larger grant for a business startup kit, all of it, it just makes such a huge, real, tangible difference, doesn't it?
It does. It really does. And any kind of support has its own value to these women, because they live in a society when they are mostly put down. They don't get a lot of support from their relatives. They don't get a lot of support from the male members in the family. So whatever small support that we can provide for these women, it really takes them from point A to point B. It pushes them to be better, to get the strength out of them. They're already strong people. That's what I always say. With the people we deal with, they're already strong people. We just help them find that strength. We are not strengthening them. They are strong at heart. And the minute they decide to enroll in our program, the minute they decide to become a part of our program, they have realized they need to get more out of life than they already did.
This is exactly it. Honestly, this is exactly it. Because, and I remember you and I, we talked about this when we saw each other. We, at Women for Women, I think we all always say that you can't empower someone else, because the power is within you, and no one can give you that power because it already resides within you, isn't it? And that's exactly what you were saying. And when you realize that, then everything changes. And I think that is the environment that we create for us as staff and for the women that we serve. And in that way, we are the same, right? That we, we allow ourselves to do this work. And in that way, we allow ourselves to nurture our power. And that is what, what our women do too. And you have said that so beautifully, Shan. I love you so much, honestly. Thank you so much for all the work that no, seriously, for all the work that you sorry.
This doesn't really feel like a work for me. This doesn't really feel like a work for me. It's my hobby. It's something I do that I enjoy every day. It's something that I take pride in. So it's not, I don't compare myself to other people who are bound by this work they have. This is really my passion.
Yes, exactly. It's your passion, it's your purpose, it's your calling. And we are so, and I feel so lucky that I know you, and Women for Women International is so lucky to have you doing the fantastic work. And thank you so much for your time, Shan. I absolutely am so grateful. And I send all my love to your entire touch with everybody, and we are here thinking of you and supporting you and cheering you on.
Thank you so much. It was great talking to you.
Thanks a lot for this. Yes, thank you. Bye. Bye.